I'm just saying that
we can't hear you for some reason. Like you're here, man, but we don't hear you. It's like you talking.
Okay. Yeah, there's something there. I don't know. It's sort of like I think that there's been a certain amount of curiosity of Black Americans visiting Africa, and I get notes from people who are asking me what's it like living in Burkina Faso, or do you think that it's a good idea? What I would do to move there, things like that.
Hey, MJ, somewhere real noisy. I think we need to, reset the room, etc. And this guy too when he's talking too much.
Yeah.
Talking about the topic.
Yeah.
They want to actually talk about the topic.
Okay.
Well, Lonzo was leaving the room. Who's leaving?
I'm saying people, people in the audience, they want to actually talk about the topic.
I think Corporate Barbie wanted to get in. I think she wanted to say so.
What if Trump's make DC actual safer?
What was that? I'll shut up if somebody has something to say.
I thought Corporate Barbie had something to say.
I did. I was trying to get more info about the topic, like what have y'all been discussing before I got here, before I respond.
I think there's a question from Notorious Al and Dimitri that came in a little bit later.
Huh?
I think there's a question for Lonzo, Al, and Notorious. They were in the very beginning. I wasn't here in the very.
Oh, okay. Lonzo, could y'all give me like what everybody was saying before I respond?
I think the topic had just started when I got in here. Me and Ben started talking. So, but what's your thoughts on the topic? How do you feel about it? I mean, I think it just started.
I feel like what Trump is doing in DC is that, let me just ask y'all this. Do y'all feel like he's making DC safer? Based on what y'all know.
I don't get it because we keep on going back to the point that in DC and these other cities that he's talking about, there's been a 30% reduction in violent crime, period. And the only way that he has an excuse to put military into the cities is if there's like an extreme emergency. What happened January 6th? January 6th was an extreme emergency, and he didn't call in the military then. But here, he pulls it in, and there's no excuse for it. There's no excuse for it.
So I was asking so I can kind of gauge what everybody else was saying, because what people think may be happening isn't actually happening. There's a lot of lying going on with this administration. You can't trust shit they say or trust any numbers that they bring to the public. You have to actually talk to those who work in that, like in certain fields or work in politics, to really get the full scope of what's going on. There was most recently, he's been fighting with our mayor, because I am from DC, a DC native, and he's been fighting with the mayor and the police chief because they want to give out accurate information about the crime in DC, and he's trying to not put out accurate information so it can make himself look good. What's happening is our constitutional rights are just not being put forth at all, or not being considered. You have a lot of unlawful searches that are going on. They're even confiscating registered guns and taking them away. They're going into the subways and they're just harassing Black people specifically, tackling them down to do searches, asking for IDs and stuff. There are several checkpoints all over the city, even close to the Maryland border. So they're even trying to trickle down on the low to go to Maryland, even though they don't have any jurisdiction for Maryland. The only reason he's able to do this is because DC doesn't have full power. DC works a little bit different than everywhere else because we don't have representation in Congress and we are not a state. So therefore, because we still fall under the federal umbrella, Trump is able to do whatever he wants to do, but he's also breaking the law. when he's doing some of these things. People's cars are being broken into without any warrants or anything like that. And now we're about to come, and this is when the National Guard was unarmed, right? So now they have called and said that we're going to go ahead and arm the National Guard, and we're going to put them in the street. You now DC is already have a lot of federal law enforcement, but now you're starting to see the federal law enforcement in your neighborhood, which is quite scary because you would normally only see them if there's a police raid or downtown. Now you're seeing them in your neighborhood. They're asking you for ID. They're just picking up people for petty, non-violent offenses. They have now taken away, I guess, cash bail. So they're locking people up. And even though it's against the law for them to detain them for a certain amount of time, you're going to have to wait until whenever they release you. You got the DEA, you got ICE, you got, ATF, you got FBI, all in your neighborhood. So these aren't just police, you got the federal police. And now they're going to be carrying assault rifles. Janine Pirro, who's this whole administration doesn't know what they're doing. Most of them are political appointees, which means that they don't have any experience, any background that would even qualify them for the jobs. They're just loyalists, and they're doing whatever Trump says, if it's unlawful or not, because law is slow. You gotta fight in the court. How long it's gonna take to fight this stuff in the court, I can't give a time frame on that. But they're doing this because they can get away with it because the law is slow. I don't know how long they're gonna allow this to happen, but if y'all think that DC needed the National Guard here for regular shit, and they only have been locking people up for traffic violations, and it hasn't really been any major offenses that they're locking people up for, I think people need to really pay attention to what's happening in DC, because he has put out a dog whistle for other states that he plans on targeting. He's targeting DC specifically because not only that, he has just your delivery drivers. We have a lot of immigrant delivery drivers. They're getting tackled on the little mopeds and getting unlawfully detained as well. We have a high-profile civil rights case going on right now with Kilmar Garcia that was picked up in Hyattsville and taken to Guantanamo Bay unlawfully, and he's still being detained right now. And they're planning on shipping him to Uganda, even though he had the right to be in the United States, right? So they're not giving a fuck about our Constitution, the law, or anything like that. They're doing whatever they want to do, and they're specifically targeting Black people and people of color, like the Mexicans or the Hispanics. So people need to pay attention to what's going on in DC, because it will trickle over to other areas. And I find it very strategic that he's targeting a lot of these states that have predominantly Black people in them, to say that they're they're very violent. Although, January 6th, when y'all tried to stage a coup, they didn't send the National Guard, but they felt the need to overthrow our police chief, who does an amazing job, by the way, and has DC crime down 30%, to do whatever they want to do. So y'all should probably pay attention to what's happening in DC, because they said Chicago is next. They're going to target California and other areas.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I came in the room when corporate was talking, so I'm not sure what the rounded opinion is, but I don't know where the agenda is for the room and the title, so I'll just sort of go off of some of her points. So there's a thing that people say, you're not from DC, so you don't know how violent DC is, right? Or someone goes, have you lived in DC? Do you live in DC? Okay, you don't, so you don't know that there was no crime except for what I heard her say, regular shit, right? Like sort of she's alluding to that the crimes that happen in DC on a regular basis are petty in nature. And I've seen with my own eyes when I lived in DC. I've gone out. I've seen kids clean out rows of cars with the police right there, with the DC, and I'm talking about the Metro Police right there, and they're telling me, shrugging their hands, there's nothing they can do about it. I've seen police being unable to stop violence, being unable to break up fights that have turned into, well, just hear me out. Fights that have turned into gang violence, that have turned into shootings, that have led to death. I've seen it. I've seen it on U Street. I've seen it on 14th. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen what people say now are these unwarranted searches. I mean, come on, we're talking about decades of what they've just changed names. There were pop out boys, there were jump out, there were all sorts of names for police who had unsolicited access into neighborhoods in Southeast DC and were able to target young men that they feel were part of a gang unit and were able to search their cars. Whether you say it's legal or illegal, it's been going on for decades. It didn't take the National Guard to start doing this. So my thing is this, right? Because I don't want to get too passionate about this and go on and on forever. There's a thing that I believe is going on, and I got this off of a lot of videos I've seen about pickpocketing in Europe, which is becoming a big thing now. It's the word desensitization. It's when people are so used to seeing a common pattern of crime that their exposure to it makes them feel like it's normal. So when they see something else that's different, they'll prioritize that while sort of reducing the impact of what they've seen. There's a lot of crime in DC, and you can't call it regular shit. If you've owned property, if you're a decent resident of Washington DC, you do not want what's been going on in DC over the last 5 years to keep happening. And anybody who is trying to minimize the impact that crime has had in DC, it's just someone that's desensitized. That's all I'm going to say. I'm for safety. I hate crime anywhere and everywhere, and I'm not going to use politics to minimize what has been going on in DC. I'll never do that, and I never voted for Trump. That's all I got to say.
Can I ask?
May I respond?
Hold on. I just want real quick, Corporate Barbie. I just want to ask him a question real quick. You was like you was here and you own property. What gangs is on you?
Exactly.
Ken,
Hold on.
What's the gangs on?
Okay, so it's tough to it's tough to answer that question with all the people here because we need to be honest with ourselves. If you go to U Street, you've seen at 2 a.m. how uncontrollable U Street is.
You said gangs. Stop avoiding.
Question.
Yeah,
Just
all the
answer
gangs.
it. If there's a gang, just name the gang.
Exactly.
Okay, I got you. Listen, trust me, we're all DMV.
If you don't know the name of...
I know the name. I'm about to say the name. I know the name. I'm about to say the name. Just let me say the name. Fox 5 Gang. Fox 5 Gang. What about the
What
Fox
the
5
fuck
Gang?
is
Do you know?
that?
So, okay.
Make something up.
See, hey guys, if you're not from the DMV, this is what they do. You know,
You
like,
made some shit up. That don't.
all you have to do is go to Google.
And you know they were Fox 5. How did you know this?
Gang.
Let me tell you.
On U Street? I've never heard of this.
For my non.
There are no gangs in DC. They have crews. They're not called gangs. So
they're not gangs. That's why when you say gang violence on U Street is uncontrollable because it's 35
college
students
students
on one block.
It's right by Howard. What the fuck?
Listen, all that
I'll just land with this.
U Street is college students.
Literally,
I feel so disappointed.
Hold on, TN. That's what I'm saying. It just sounds foolish. U Street is where bars and clubs are. So of course it will be quote unquote uncontrollable at 2 a.m. because all the bars just closed and everybody's drunk leaving the bar. But it was strange that you said gang violence on U Street when we all know in DC there's no gangs. We don't have Bloods or Crips or gangs. We have crews based on where you live. So quote unquote gang violence would happen where niggas live, like on the south side, between like 18th and 21st or something. It's not, U Street. So that's where people hang out. So right now they have an increased police presence where black people go to have fun, college kids on U Street and on 14th. And what's that doing? It's destroying DC's economy because everybody's afraid to go outside. Everybody who organizes events in DC has been canceling all the events because everybody's afraid to go outside.
That's why I agree
So
with
all of the businesses, the real repercussions of this,
The businesses are hurt.
Last week was restaurant.
Hey, this shit was trash.
All of the restaurants said they had no reservations, which is so strange for restaurant week.
Yeah.
All of the businesses are hurting the most. So if you're a property owner in DC, you should be upset at the fact that the businesses are struggling all over the city because everybody, black people, white people, Latinos, everyone is afraid to go outside and nobody's spending.
When I found out that they were unlawfully detaining people.
Barbie, respectfully, I did ask to speak.
Okay. Y'all know
Can I get in the queue too?
Same here.
Yeah, this is
Because he was rebutting off my point, but I like to talk after your.
Oh, thanks. I just want to share. I live in Washington, D.C. I've been around town a few times this week on my bicycle. I've had a chance to observe what's happening, and it is true that the increased police presence is affecting the lived realities of people. You will find an increased military presence in the metro stations. I biked by Union Station a few days ago. There were 2 armored cars out there. There were a few military people out there. Folks have been detained and in some cases arrested for fare evasion. I think Corporate Barbie talked about the delivery guys on mopeds who were simply trying to make ends meet by delivering ordered meals and other goods to DC residents. And a lot of them have been arrested. Those who haven't been arrested are no longer on the streets. Now, to be fair, in some cases, these are people who don't have proper vehicle registration, and perhaps some of them don't have their papers, so they're scared to expose themselves to the to ICE officers. But you know what? They weren't bothering anybody. They were just delivering food. And everybody knows that in a city, the fact that you have a law on the books doesn't necessarily mean that you have to enforce the law, because police departments have priorities. And somebody who's biking on a moped, delivering food from day to day and not harming anybody is not going to be at the top of your priority list for law enforcement. Now, the guy who spoke before me wanted people to think that Donald Trump has the legal authority to interfere with the way DC conducts its affairs or whatever he wants to, but that's not the case. We have a law called the Home Rule Act, and there's a section of that law that does allow the president, under narrow circumstances, to ask the Metropolitan Police Department to provide police services under very narrow circumstances. There has to be an emergency. It has to be a pretty big deal, and the president can't require the MPD's services for too long. Depending on how you read the law, you may conclude that the president has only 30 days to do this, and after the 30-day period ends, he'll have to ask Congress to give him permission to continue doing so. That is currently being handled in the courts. The judge responsible for presiding over the case is a lady named Ana Reyes. She's new on the bench. She hasn't been there that too long. She was appointed by Joe Biden, I believe. She is a Uruguayan American, and for those of you who are interested, she's also openly lesbian. She has not shown the Trump administration much deference. She seems to believe that Donald Trump has overstepped his bounds just because of the way he's doing it. In fact, last week, he tried to take all of the authority from the police chief and give the authority to run the police department to Terry Cole, who's currently the interim chief of the Drug Enforcement Agency. Fortunately for Washington, D.C., Judge Reyes let them know last week that that was not okay, given what she knows about the case, and that they had to change things so at least the police chief, who is great, remains in control of the Metropolitan Police Department. There are a few other things that they're sorting out right now, and my hope is that by the end of the month, we'll have a decision from the judge letting us know whether Trump overstepped the legal bounds of his authority or not. My guess is that he did, and I'm hoping that the judge rules in favor of Washington, D.C., so that at least there can be an order on the books letting Trump know that he has to fall back. So to the guy who spoke before I did, the other thing I'll say is the justification that Trump is given for what he's doing doesn't wash out. He says that D.C. has a serious crime problem that warrants federal intrusion. That doesn't make any sense because the undisputed evidence shows us that crime has been on the decline for several years. And so we have less crime today than we had last year, than we had the year before. So crime is reduced. And if you're going to say that you are entitled to rely on an exception in the Home Rule Act to interfere with DC Home Rule, you have to have a legitimate explanation for it. And so far, Donald Trump has not offered one. Is it possible that he might? It's possible, but none of the reasons he's given so far pass legal muster. And I can assure you that lawyers who studied this do not agree with you. I'm not saying that there isn't crime in Washington, D.C. There is. But the story that Donald Trump is telling about the criminal activity in Washington, D.C. is a false one. We have less crime today. We don't have more.
I want Dr. and Corporate to look at my PTR and then I need an apology. I need an apology.
Can I get in the queue?
No, I'm not apologizing nothing because I have to fact check it.
You were wrong.
Everything.
No, we're not wrong. This is
everything that this administration puts out. You cannot fucking trust it.
Just admit you were wrong.
It's smoke and mirrors. No, I'm not going to do anything until.
Hold on, Corporate Barbie, real quick. This is the thing. You said, I asked you what gang was on U Street. You said the Fox 5 gang. The Fox 5 gang, everybody knows if you're from DC.
Now you're gonna lie that you knew.
I'm not lying.
You said that gangs are. You said the gang doesn't have a place.
Can I finish?
It did have a place on 38th Street.
Can I finish what I'm saying? Thanks. I literally said, like Corporate Barb said, if you're from this area, you know, niggas beef based off where you're from. If you're from DC, you know from a young age, we say real live Fox 5. These are niggas from 37th who started saying Fox 5 gang. This because they live. This is not a gang, a real. If you go to 37th right now, are you a part of Fox 5 gang? What the fuck is that? That's what the media calls them, and white people. It is what they say in rap songs. That's just the niggas from 37th. And again, they says they're from 37th Southeast. So how did you get that? That's the gang on U Street. That's not even the same. It's not even the same person.
Okay, so there are. Am I the Matrix? Damn.
We can
Okay,
hear
so
you.
No, we can hear you, content.
He mistakenly
There
ran
are
into a DC
podcasts.
person.
Okay, so there are podcasts that I just looked up on YouTube from former DC gang members and current DC gang members. There's a former DC gang leader. I just dropped the link in the chat, and I'm looking on YouTube right now, and this is from the actual gang members saying that there are gangs in DC. So I just want to respond to the lady that said there's no gangs in DC. There are actually gang members saying that there's gangs, and I think that their word
Thank you, brother.
has a little bit more validity than yours.
Yeah, but that's not accurate.
Liars.
Just because you're
That's
from
not accurate.
there,
Helen, I'm from
I didn't cut you off. I didn't cut you off. You're triggered.
Don't make me get a big mic. Y'all not from this area, so y'all wouldn't necessarily understand. But it's a difference between a crew and a gang. A crew isn't like an organization. These gangs are like organizations. So there could be a semantics thing going on with the verbiage of a gang, but in actuality, it's not a gang. They're not a gang. You will not go to a
No, they're right.
They're not a gang. They're not considered a gang.
They're right. It's Fox. They're right. It's Fox. It's not organized.
It's not organized crime. There's nothing organized about it.
Don't gotta be a blood or a
Hold on,
crip,
this
okay?
is what we're trying to explain to y'all. It's not organized crime in the way that, like, they could never put a RICO charge against these niggas.
Yeah.
Yes,
All
they
it
can and
literally
they have.
is, I'm
Well,
trying
they
to
pull up the
explain-
articles for that.
Hold on, I'm trying to explain it to you. Literally, the street, it's not a lie thing. There's nothing to lie about.
Okay, more articles
Like,
coming.
okay, you got it. We both can't talk at the same time. Thank you.
I just don't want you to lie to people.
Okay, so you got it.
Just
Hey, hold on. Let Doctor speak. Just relax for a second. Go ahead, Doctor.
Thank you. What I'm trying to explain is this. This is not gang violence, how y'all think about fucking LA or some shit. There's not gangs where the gangs run operations, just organized crime, like such and such has a leader and we looking for the leader. All this is niggas from different streets in DC don't fuck with niggas from the other street. All of the streets, most of the streets, have numbers as names, which is why in your PTR it says people from 37. People from 37th don't like people from 38. That's why you'll hear a lot of DC rap. They'll say 38, 14th, whatever the fuck they from. 25th.
You do realize that's how they started.
I'm almost done.
Yo, relax, brother.
This is not how they organize crime, drug dealing, anything like that. Literally, it's just beef that they have in the music. So when they rap, if you from 37th, if you disrespect somebody from 38, that's beef. Then they shoot niggas from 38, you from 37.
No.
This is not organized crime in that way.
Listen,
so we all talking about there's no
Just let her finish and then you can go.
there's no leaders, quote unquote. There's no hierarchy. It's just a bunch of niggas who went to school together on the block.
That's how gangs started, right? Somebody
brother. No, it's not.
Listen, I heard you out. That is how gangs started. It was somebody from Grape Street in California who formed Grape Street Crip. It was somebody from Hoover Street in LA formed the Hoover Criminal Gang. They was protecting their territory and they was beefing with other streets. That's literally how gangs started. Crip Street is an actual street. Hoover Gang,
they was beefing with the police.
Hold on.
Y'all gotta relax.
Quick question.
Hoover Street, Hoover Gang is an actual street. That's what Carew Street is a gang, but it's an actual street. They started off protecting their neighborhood, protecting their street and their block, and it formed to gangs because they was fighting other streets. And they formed to, that's what gangs started from.
I understand. And just a quick question. Assuming that's true, are you saying that how gangs started is exactly what the formations are in DC right now when it comes to crime? That these are actual gangs? Or are you just trying to give us the genealogy of gangs?
That's exactly what I'm telling you. I'm telling you, these are.
So you're just saying that these are how gangs start, not that they are gangs?
No, I just told you that's exactly what I'm telling you. That these are gangs. They're gang banging over their street. That's why they're killing other people from other streets that they don't like because they're from another street, from another block. That's gang. They're gangs.
Can I respond because I'm in a minority of thought here, and you've got 4 people. Please give me 1 minute to respond to some of this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
So when I talk about, like, let's be honest, right? Like, we have a room full of people who are not from the DMV, right? So, like, when someone asks me a question like, I'm guessing they're identifying that I know the DMV, I've lived in the DMV, I'm from the DMV. So they'll say, oh, Are you trying to say there are gangs on U Street? Now, they know that both them and myself know that gangs don't live on U Street. But it's a way to fuck with the people's psyche who are trying to get accurate information about DC to believe that I'm saying nonsense. Because how the fuck can U Street have gangs, right? U Street is a strip of entertainment. It has bars, it has nightlife. We know that. But see, she said something very dishonest to throw people off. So let me talk about the gangs.
So she requires you to be accurate? That's dishonest?
Okay,
Yes.
so it's ridiculous, right? It's like you're asking me if they gangbang. Who are the gangbangers? And on I don't know, name Six Flags. It doesn't exist, right? But why bring that up, right? So the point I'm saying is this: you're talking about gangs and you're trying to classify types of gangs. You're saying gang A, gang B, gang C. Which gang has more notoriety? Which gang has more global recognition? We know the Bloods and Crips do. The Bloods and Crips have more notoriety. They have global recognition because of their color-coded disparities and all that. So we know about the Bloods and Crips. But I'm telling you that on a small scale within DC, I've been in studios in Southeast DC in my past days, and I've heard and seen young men rep the Fox 5 gang. I know them. I have a kid named Lil Squirt right now doing 10 years. This is a kid that I put under my wing. He's an active gang member. I'm the one telling you guys this, so don't lie to people who are not from DC.
We're not lying.
Does this kid rep Fox 5? He reps Fox 5? Okay.
This is misleading though, and this is the problem when y'all get on this app. And I understand that you are, you used to be a resident, but it's totally different. Like people that are from the area is trying to give you context, and for you, we have to be careful with our language because that fucking matters, and it also matters to our fucking safety. Like this isn't just a talking fucking point. We're actually living in this shit right now. So, like, let's be clear about the language. There is a clear difference between gangs and fucking crews. And I put in the fucking chat just in case anybody needs more context. A gang is an organized fucking, is an organization. And they can do a bunch of different shit that could lead to a fucking RICO. A crew is not that.
You know, for years, socioculturally, DC residents, especially people in the DMV, have tried their best to make people outside of DMV not see them as a city that has gangs. They hate that word. They hate that term.
The police doesn't even recognize it
I want to clarify something. Let's clarify something. I'm from the DMV. I was born in the city, raised mostly in Northern Virginia, PG County. I work in DC. DC folks who are from DC, for example, like Dr. Library Card, understand, at least for me, when I was growing up, the DMV, while we understand it as a cohesive unit, it's really a term that emerges, at least in my mind, with gentrification.
That's correct.
Just because you're from the DMV doesn't mean you know anything about DC. Folks from McLean, Virginia, who don't even go to DC like that unless they want to have a little phone, don't know shit about what the politics are in DC like that, and the social relationships in DC. Folks who live in PG County, some of them don't know what the fuck is. If you live in Bowie, you don't know shit about probably what's going on in DC because you probably ain't out there like that because DC too damn far for you. So we have to stop making it seem as just because you grew up in the area. If you're from fucking Chantilly or Fairfax, you may not even know that much about DC. So just because you're from the area doesn't mean you know about what the fuck is going on in DC. I've grown up in DC in and out for a good part of my life. There are still things about DC I don't know about. But what I do know, just not to move away too much from the conversation, is that most residents, and the polls have been taken on this, hate the fucking increased police presence. We're seeing all kinds of agents. I mean, I was fucking out on Benning Road this past week, hanging out with some people. Like seeing fucking DEA agents just rolling up on people for no fucking reason. Baseless shit. No fucking probable cause, nothing. Just rolling up on them, showing their faces. Kicking motherfuckers out of the metro station. I was at, what's that joint? Stadium jump by RFK or whatever. I was out by that metro station. Motherfucking police officers just rolling up on people. DEA agents, others just rolling up on people for no fucking reason. Like, there's no justification for this, especially with after what Hurricane said, when you're seeing a decrease in crime. To make it seem, you're talking about being misleading, to make it seem as if residents actually want this shit, it's fucking bullshit. And it's to ignore the kind of work that residents have tried to do, especially DC natives, to combat crime. If this administration was serious about combating crime in the city, it would try to work with people who are on the ground who've been doing this shit for years rather than trying to assert some fucking federal force as if motherfuckers want them there.
Well, one thing we do know is nobody's going to really try to do anything stupid with that amount of force on the streets. However, I do agree that what they're doing is wrong and it doesn't make sense because, like you just said, the crime has been decreasing. And for Trump to make a statement saying, hey, I want to go to Chicago next, when Chicago is at an all-time low since 2014, it literally does not make sense. But however, what we do know is ain't nobody gonna be doing nothing stupid while they out there. So
That's,
go ahead.
Yeah, actually we don't know that because
continue to go ahead. Continue to go ahead and wipe up all the niggas that need to be wiped up. So
I have a question for the stage. Do you guys know what home rule is and why Congress can overthrow it?
I know what home rule is. I know that Congress passed.
No, not the people from DC. I want the people on DC on mute. Let everybody else answer. I'm proving a point. Yeah.
Okay,
let me be more specific. The people not from DC, mute up. I mean, the people that are from DC or DC, well, from DC, mute up. Everybody else on the stage, could y'all tell me what that is and why it could be overthrown?
what you saying again?
Do you happen to know what the Home Rule Act is and why Congress can overthrow it? This is important.
No, I don't. I actually never heard of it.
No one? Anyone?
Yeah, I'm not from DC, but are you referencing to DC being a district and not a state, and that's why the federal government has power and authority?
She's not referencing that.
A little bit.
She said home rule. There is a law called the Home Rule Act. It was passed in 1973, and that law determines how much power DC has to govern itself. That's what she's asking about, Notorious. It's okay if you don't know what it is, but there is a law that does exist, and it gave the District of Columbia expansive powers to govern itself. The federal government does not retain superior power over DC.
So, Hurricane, in your opinion, you believe that Donald Trump, what he's doing is illegal, period. Just hands down.
Yes, I do. And to be honest, in order to engage in this conversation in a meaningful way, you have to understand what home rule means. If you don't, you don't have the bandwidth to have this conversation in a meaningful way. I'm not being shady, I'm being honest.
Yeah,
if you don't know what home rule is, then just no point in talking.
I'll speak on this.
Do you know what home rule is?
No, I mean the whole subject of what's
going on. Do you know what DC?
Mucho. Let us make this point first before we get to your point. I know you wanted to contribute to the conversation, but the reason why I asked that, and like Hurricane said, is to give more context as to actually what is going on in DC. Just like Hurricane said, the Home Rule Act gave DC the ability to, because DC is not a state, we are the nation's capital, we are a city. Which means we don't have any representation in Congress when it's time to put in those electoral votes, right? So to understand what home rule is, like Hurricane said, it gave DC the ability to govern themselves, the ability to elect its own mayor and city council. Before that, Congress directly appointed its local leader. It allows DC government to pass local laws, manage budgets, administer city services. However, DC does not have full sovereignty. Congress retains the power to review and overturn local laws, and all locally passed budgets must be sent to Congress for approval. So, because the only way that they can overthrow DC's ability to govern ourselves is to overthrow the Home Rule Act. And in order to do that, it has to be a state of emergency situation. DC crime was actually down 30% when Donald Trump decided to claim it as an emergency to militarize the DC area and bring the National Guard. So let me get into what happens when they overthrow it. When Congress overrides home rule, Congress can step in at any time by passing legislation that cancels or overrides a DC law and prevents it from taking effect. This often happens around budget issues such as restrictions on how DC can use its own tax dollars, abortion funding, marijuana regulation, or needle exchange program. It can also occur when Congress attaches riders to federal appropriation bills that block or alter DC laws.
Yeah, I know a little bit about the Home Rule Act, but I'm a little bit uneducated on it. I know a little bit.
Well, I just read what it was.
Oh yeah, I have some other information.
So to Hurricane's point, I'll just quickly say Hurricane's absolutely right, and as Hurricane knows, I'm rarely in the position to challenge his legal expertise on most matters, if not all. And this is something that Hurricane alluded to in his first submission, which is, whether Trump in his executive order has sufficiently or legitimately declared an emergency in D.C. Of course, section, I think it's 740 of the Home Rule Act.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, which allows for this kind of, taking over, this usurping or supplanting of DC police or using of DC police for federal purposes. This hasn't, of course, been litigated in courts. Trump comes out with the executive order. The concern is that, not necessarily at the district court level, but I think this gets to the DC Circuit and potentially the Supreme Court. Do the courts want to be in a place of second guessing what a president declares an emergency? Of course, that takes vast presidential and executive discretion, but we put ourselves, I think the courts rather put themselves in a very tough situation when ultimately you would either be required to lay out a test for what would be necessary to declare an emergency in DC, which I don't think courts would deem appropriate when it comes to the president asserting his authority, or at the very least you say, this doesn't rise to the level of legitimacy for purposes of this section of the act. But I still feel that the courts would be very reluctant to question presidential authority and what a president could deem an emergency in this circumstance or others.
So why do you guys, I see that you guys are against this, so why do you guys think that Trump is doing this? What is his ultimate goal?
What he's trying to do is incite
white supremacists.
He's trying to incite race war.
That are majority black, and he's fucking with immigrants and niggas. That's why he's doing it. He's doing it just to say he can. I mean, this was all in Project 2025 as well, so it's not really I don't want to say it's not a surprise, but we knew this was coming. Like Kamala Harris talked about this during the campaign trail. It was in Project 2025. If you read it, this is all a part of the thing to expand what the federal government can do to states that disagree with Trump loudly or don't. What is the language they use? Don't align with the views of the federal government, aka what Trump's administration said they should do. So putting Pam Bondi in control of the DC Metro PD is right in line with what they said they were going to do in Project 2025. If they feel if they feel entities are not doing in whatever municipalities are not doing things in alignment with the federal government. They're just gonna put somebody from Trump, one of Trump's appointees, in charge of the shit and do what they want to do.
Yeah,
So I'd
Exactly.
like to hold on. Let me
No,
build
sorry.
on. Yeah, let me build on that. So on February 5th, two Republican congresspersons, Senator Mike Lee and Representative Andy Ogles, introduced a bill in the Senate and the House called the Bowser Act, named after Mayor Muriel Bowser. Bowser stands for Bringing Oversight to Washington and Safety to Every Resident. That's what the acronym Bowser stands for.
Very clever with these names, by the way. That's what to say.
Yes. So if the bill is passed, what the bill would do is repeal the Home Rule Act that we've been talking about 1 year after the bill is passed. The Republicans want to federalize Washington, D.C. completely. They want to take home rule away, and they want to make sure that they are in charge of Washington, D.C. for at least the next few years. The bill itself does not have enough support in either chamber of Congress to allow it to be put on the floor for a vote. But what this tells us is that there are federal legislators who do want to wrest home rule from Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is using his power as the chief executive to further this agenda. So what we are likely to see is a three-pronged approach to kill D.C. home rule. One prong is this proposed bill in Congress. The second prong is Donald Trump's executive order trying to take over the Metropolitan Police Department. And then the third prong would be getting the case to be heard by a judge who is sympathetic to Trump's agenda and the GOP's agenda. And like Black Freedom Struggle said, if this case gets in front of the wrong judge, there's a strong likelihood that the judge is going to rubber stamp Donald Trump's conclusion that Washington, D.C. has too much crime, that Washington, D.C.'s police chief and the Metropolitan Police Department have not been able to adequately address the crime, and that the chief executive of the United States is therefore should be allowed to use his power as commander-in-chief to check the problem. This narrative that the crime rate in Washington, D.C. is uncontrollable is one that Trump and his cronies have been parroting for a long time. We've got Senator Mike Lee and Representative Andy Ogles telling Congress that is the case. If you go to Mike Lee's website, you'll see that he says D.C. has failed to govern itself. He says that there's a long history of official corruption, including recent federal bribery charges against Councilman Trayon White. He says that there are repeated armed carjackings and violence by teenage gangs. He says that there are assaults and robberies on congressional staffers and members of Congress. He says that Mayor Bowser's crime policies are soft on crime, which he believes encourages criminals to victimize innocent Americans. He is accusing Washington, D.C. officials of allowing non-citizens to vote in elections that they should not be allowed to vote in. And he also says that there are backwards regulations leading to a high cost of living. I don't know what those backwards regulations are. So we just have to be very careful. We should not be deceived by the narrative that Donald Trump and his cronies are repeating out there. No one is saying that crime does not occur in Washington, D.C. Crime does. Crime occurs everywhere. What we're saying is that a long time ago, Congress, after deliberating for a while, passed the Home Rule Act, giving Washington, D.C. certain powers to govern itself and allowing the president to ask the mayor of Washington, D.C. to provide MPD services to the federal government, but only under a narrow set of circumstances. The law itself says, to an extent, what those narrow circumstances are. And in my view,
Those narrow circumstances don't exist here. They're just not there. There's no reason to say that we need federal military in Washington, D.C. We don't have increased crime. We don't have that. We have less. What Donald Trump did, and then I'll stop after this, is capitalize on a particular event. A few days ago, a former Doge employee was the victim of an attempted carjacking. Donald Trump allegedly got a picture of this guy and posted it on Truth Social and said, hey guys, this picture represents the reason that I have to step in Washington, D.C. Because this guy, who was the victim of an attempted carjacking, suffered, he's my friend, and what's happening to him is happening far too often, and that is why I need to get the federal government involved. The problem is, that's not true. I mean, it is true that the guy it was the victim of an attempted carjacking, but it's not true that carjacking rates are up. They're down, just like everything else is down. Fewer homicides, fewer high carjackings or attempted hijackings, fewer other types of violent crimes. There's no justification for it. The only way that Donald Trump can justify what he is doing is by lying.
Absolutely. And if it wasn't that Doge employee or former employee, none of this probably would be happening, right? I mean, Notorious, to answer your question, why is he doing this? Well, he's just, the cursory, answer to that. He's essentially recycling Nixon's, war on crime, which was code for war on black people. Look at the cities he's going after. Not only are they Democratic, but they're black women. LA, right? Until Newsom pushed back. It's absolute optics. It's a Band-Aid. And for those that think this is a great idea, I'd love to hear your answer as to what happens when, and it's going to happen when the National Guard leaves. Like, if this is the magic wand to solve all crime in these cities, well, what's going to happen? Gasp when they leave. We're suddenly going to, you think law enforcement feels empowered because they've been overstepped? Negative. It's a Band-Aid, it's optics, it's pure show of force.
No, all that's great. It's really tough because, those who believe that this is a good idea, when we think about crime in our country, it's typically left to the states and even more specifically to local governments. I mean, it's why when you have a traffic violation or you even have whatever kind of charge, most of it is going to your local courts, controlled, of course, by the state, all that. Okay. This is why we have federalism in our country. Okay. Leave stuff like crime up to the states. So when we read Section 740 of the Home Rule Act, Trump, or the federal government, the president rather, can only come in, as Hurricane was talking about, and as others have mentioned, I believe as well, for federal purposes, provide services for federal purposes. Now we have to ask ourselves the question, when it comes to local crime, when has that ever been the purpose of the federal government? Outside of particular emergencies. For example, let's say, when there's rioting or something to that effect. When you're talking about crime that has gone down, there's been no riots, there's been no kind of conflagration in the city, when has there been a history, and I imagine that a justice like Ketanji Brown Jackson or Justice Sotomayor would ask this question to the Solicitor General, if this goes before the Supreme Court, when has it ever been in the history of our nation, outside of riots or rebellions or whatever, that your typical run-of-the-mill crimes that the local government seems to have in control because crime's been going down, when has that ever been a federal purpose? To the extent that the president needs to come in and say the local police need to provide services for the federal government to address it. It'd be hard-pressed to find instances in history that would warrant that. So I think that Hurricane is certainly right when it comes to what the outcome should be. What the outcome, in my estimation, will likely be is, again, the courts don't want to be in this position, and this is kind of like the ugly feature of our constitutional structure. The courts don't want to be in the position to second guess what a president deems to be an emergency. And so we'll probably get a few strong dissents, but I imagine that the courts will say, you know what, Trump was in his authority to come in and take over the Metropolitan Police Department for federal purposes.
I think if there's not a competent solution, then we shouldn't argue with someone trying to present a solution, right? I don't think we've given enough time to play out to see the results. We haven't given it enough time to let this play out.
Have you read the Home Rule Act?
No, I said we haven't. We're talking about failed solutions. All the solutions that failed, like.
What solutions have been proposed that have failed?
No, I'm saying law enforcement, whatever they're doing, the crime rate is still what the crime rate is. So
it's a 30-year low.
What's the solution?
It's a 30-year low.
No, instead of talking about they shouldn't be there, let's talk about solutions.
You're avoiding my question.
30-year low.
You haven't read the Home Rule Act. You don't know what DC Home Rule stands for. You don't know why Home Rule is the law of the land. You don't understand.
The Hurricane, I don't just want to talk about problems.
Stay out the way. Stay out the streets.
But the problem is.
Stay out the way.
Yeah, why are we talking about the problem more than?
Yeah, I know.
So you don't want to talk about the
I'm a solution.
You're doing the thing that the Manosphere bros like to do, where they don't know anything, but they come on stage, speak with a deep voice, and say, "Oh well, we just got to talk about that."
You don't gotta be condescending. We got an intelligent conversation.
I'm being condescending.
I'm gonna answer this. Hurricane, may I answer this?
Condescending.
Yeah, we don't.
I'm being condescending.
Well, you're
I'm the only one in the conversation who's actually intelligent because I've taken time to learn about.
I'm talking about your delivery. I said we have intelligent without you having a condescending delivery.
Come on, you good?
Come on, we're not going. So I'm just saying.
No, the condescension is required because you started with condescension.
Well, Hurricane, you're making assumptions. We don't know each other, and you making assumptions.
Scott,
You're throwing ignorance. Okay, go ahead.
Oh no, I'm not throwing ignorance.
So Scott,
you don't know what DC Home Rule stands for. The reason people are complaining is that there is a law that forbids Donald Trump to do what he has done. That's the problem. People aren't talking and complaining about Donald Trump simply because they don't like him. They're complaining about Donald Trump because there is a law that they understand to forbid what Donald Trump is doing. That's the problem.
Okay.
Have you read it?
Listen, Hurricane, so I'm asking about solutions outside of solution.
I'll give you the solution. I'll give you the solution.
Okay.
Hold on.
Because you're talking about the problem.
Solutions.
Listen,
the law itself.
Hold on.
That's where the solutions come from.
Listen,
so someone read the law before you start talking about solutions because you don't know
but
what you're talking
you're speaking what's already known. Okay, we know he's breaking the law, Hurricane. Don't speak what's already known.
So this is the thing. I wanted to answer his question. I wanted to answer his question real quick.
Let me say this right.
All right. I tried to see how long y'all were going to go before y'all allowed each other to speak, but it's clear that y'all probably need like a cue or something.
Yeah, we're doing okay, Lonzo. It didn't last so long. Longer than usual when you got the Jamaican thing.
Yeah, I was just going to answer the question right quick.
Okay, thank you.
Lonzo. Yeah, it'll be quick, really. So the solution is, to Hurricane's point, you enforce the law. When it comes to Trump, like, if we believe that we are a country of laws, we enforce the law. If there's a constitutional or a statutory violation, you enforce the law. Leaving that aside, when it comes to the solution regarding crime in D.C., the solution is what's been going on. Crime is down approximately 26%. All right? 30-year low. Seems like things were working. You let that play out. That's what you do. You don't all of a sudden intervene and say, hey, crime's going down. Let's jump in there some more. That's been the issue. You work with local folks, as from my understanding, speaking with some local organizers, working with the police, along with just being on the streets, doing the necessary work to address crime. At the end of the day, things have been working. They've been working in the city. So that's the solution. Allow the shit to play out because it's been effective.
Yeah, I partly agree with that. I would say the solution is. Okay. Hold on, one second, Scott. I partly agree with what he just said. The solution is, number one, y'all need to stay out of the way, because if you think you're going to go down there and protest, that's going to end up in the result of Black lives dead, right? So that is exactly what you should not do. But what they do need to do is stay out of the way, do their job, do what they've been doing, not participating in crime, number one. Number two, what they have to do is go through their politicians. Like, I don't know if y'all been watching, that politician in Chicago, he spoke out against Trump, saying this is something that we do not need, right? Raising awareness in the media, in the front for it, letting them know that we are handling our city, we are taking control of our city. We don't need Trump to do that. So y'all have to really push for your elected officials to start speaking out and raising awareness. Let me finish speaking. Hold on, Harry Kane. Let me finish, brother. Harry Kane, let me finish, brother. And they need to go through their elected officials to speak out against what Trump is doing in order to raise awareness to get this thing ended. That's going to be difficult and hard for them to do,